Good morning, boys and girls. I hope you are all well. This morning we are going to look at another hero of the faith. And the hero this week is someone who looked after sheep. And it's someone who needed to use a stone for something. Can you guess who our hero this week is? You are right. It is David. So I have asked 4 very special boys and girls to help me to tell you all about David. I hope you like it. The biggest and toughest, the story of David's big faith, based on 1 Samuel chapter 17. The Philistine army stood facing King Saul. They acted as though they weren't frightened at all. But King Saul's mighty army was shaking with fear, falling over each other to get to the rear. There, standing in front of the Philistine camp, was a giant, the Philistines' fierce fighting champ. His name was Goliath, and man was he scary. His muscles were huge, his body was hairy. He stood 9 feet tall, about as tall as a tree, the biggest man anyone ever did see. The men in Saul's army, and even King Saul, thought he was the biggest and toughest of all. The giant cried,
"Send me a soldier to fight. I'll smash them all day and I'll stomp them all night. When all of the smashing and stomping is through, your land will be ours. We'll make slaves out of you."
For 40 long days he repeated the call, but no one would fight with him, no one at all. David, a shepherd boy, shepherded sheep, keeping beasties away so his sheep he could keep. Though 3 of his brothers had gone with King Saul, young David stayed home because he was too small. His father gave David another big chore,
Take the 2 brothers
who were fighting the war.
who were fighting the war.
Whatever his father would say, he'd obey, so he packed up a donkey and went on his way. When David arrived at the camp, he heard shouting. Mean insults and teases Goliath was spouting.
"Just when will you chickens send me someone to fight? I'll smash them all day and I'll stomp them all night. When all of the smashing and stomping is through, your land will be ours. We'll make slaves out of you."
Again the king's soldiers went running in fear, falling over each other to get to the rear. David called to the soldiers.
"I hear is that his insults remain, his teasing is rude. Goliath, 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 Goliath."
The king's soldiers were frightened and ran away. Goliath was tough. David was silly to stay. But David decided to talk to King Saul, to tell him that he was not frightened at all. The king said,
"Goliath is big and he's tough. You're a boy with a sling, that's not nearly enough."
Young David spoke of how he fought a lion and bear. Both were bigger than him, so the fights were not fair.
"With God as my strength, both animals died. With God as my strength, he will be my guide."
The king said to David,
"The Lord be with you. Take my armor, my helmet, my shield, and my sword."
But the armour was big and the sword weighed a lot. They fit on the king, but on David did not. So off came the armour and all of the king's stuff.
"With God as my strength, my sling will be enough."
He gathered some stones from the bed of a stream. As he did, he could hear the big Philistine scream.
"I called for a soldier, he set out a squirt, sent him back to his mummy, he's gonna get hurt. The boy is too weak to put up a fight. I'll smash him all day and I'll stomp him all night. When all of the smashing and stomping is through, your land will be ours. We'll make slaves out of you.
Then David said,
You have your spear and your sword, but I will fight you in the name of the Lord.
David loaded his sling and he spun it around. The stone hit the giant, then he hit the ground. Now the Philistine army went running in fear, falling over each other to get to the rear. Young David said,
God made Goliath fall because he is the biggest and toughest of them all. I can't believe David fought that giant with just a sling and won. That's amazing. Yes, it is amazing, but it wasn't just a sling. David had God with him. He had faith that God would help him. So David's a hero, not just because he beat Goliath, but because he had faith in God. Exactly. The Bible says faith is far more precious than gold. If we have faith in God, we have everything we need and more, just like David.
David was a kid, watching sheep was what he did, and he did it very well every day. He kept the sheep safe and sound when the lions were around, and he kept the wolves at bay. And then along came a day, all the people were afraid of the Philistine army coming round. They had a giant on their team, very hairy, very mean, and every day he called them out. He said, you're weak and you're chicken and you're scared. Boop, boop. And for the next 40 days he dared. Every day he would call for the best. But nobody thought they were up to the test. 'Cause he was bigger than the biggest, and taller than the tallest, and badder than the baddest of them all. He was rougher than the roughest, and tougher than the toughest. But David had a friend in God. Told him, get a rock, take a shot. Think you're little, but you're not. I'll help you do what you have to do. You're a whole lot bigger 'cause you're mine. Now get ready, aim, and let it fly. One rock, one shot, one giant's gonna drop. You can take him down if you have to. So David volunteered, and it seemed a little weird. He was little after all, kinda small. But with God on his side, he paid no never mind to the giant who was super, super tall. 'Cause God is tougher than the toughest, buffer than the buffest, and better than the best of them all. So with a stone in his slingshot, David hit the right spot, and boom, the giant went down. One rock, one shot, one giant's gonna drop. You can take him down if you have to. One rock, one shot, one giant's gonna drop. All you ever have to do is ask him. It was the little guy, but God was on his side, and so he knew he'd be okay. Okay. Knew